What's up, guys? It's Johnny Candido of Candido Training.
HQ.
And I wanted to talk about why I personally promote the USAPL and IPF. And for those who don't know, the IPF is the International Powerlifting Federation, which is the biggest powerlifting federation in the world. And the USAPL is the specific division for the IPF, but for the United States specifically. So now when I get into it, I want to make it clear, since I know a lot of my viewers are not from the United States, that you would have to look up if there is a federation that's associated within the IPF for your country. But anyways, to get into why I personally believe that this is the key to powerlifting success, honestly, in the mainstream, to become a mainstream sport, is because of really three main points. And the first one is the fact that it is drug tested. Now, I know that there's a lot of debate on this issue, and I'm not going to pretend like drug testing is a perfect system at all, or even, very effective. You could tell me that someone could use drugs and for sure get by if they actually know what they're doing, and I believe that. I believe that that is the case. However, I think it's still important to have a drug-tested sport when you talk about it becoming mainstream and you talk about getting a lot of people into it to become healthier. Also, this is kind of a weird point, but if someone is cheating and is using drugs in a tested competition, at least they're going to most likely be forced to use less than a completely untested competition. So that at least puts the brakes on it a little bit, even if it can't catch everyone. I know that's kind of conceding a loss there, but it's just the reality of the situation. My second point, and possibly the strongest one for why I always will lift in the USAPL and IPF, is a matter of legitimacy. It's the fact that if you complete a squat in the USAPL, under USAPL judging, you have to hit depth and you have to properly perform the lift. You have to control the weight. There is nothing that they allow in terms of leeway. And I know a lot of people, sometimes criticize that it's too strict. But in my opinion, it's better for a sport to be too strict than to be too lenient. And we've all seen this. Just type in West Side Barbell Squat and you'll see a bunch of half squats. And I don't think that that's good for the sport. I think it's actually terrible for the sport. And if that was the route that the sport was going in, I would be an Olympic weightlifter instead of a powerlifter. Because I don't want any part of not following literally the rules in your rule book, your federation's rule book. Everyone has the same rules. So to just not follow that is absurd to me.
Come on, son. Get the fuck out of here with that.
And I will agree that there are some technical points that people debate about that are kind of pointless in my opinion. Like if your feet are on the bench, or if your heels are on the bench specifically, whether that should be allowed or not. And in my opinion, I just don't think that matters. Personally, that's not an interesting topic of discussion. I don't think your bench press is not legit if your toes are on the floor rather than your entire foot. But anyways, I think that it is a big point, the fact that you have to squat to depth, the fact that you have to deadlift properly, and the 2-hour weigh-in, in my opinion, is the best way. Because when it comes to saying how much you weigh on a certain day and how much you lift, people are assuming you're that body weight or at least close to it the day of the lift. So if you have a full 24 hours and you weigh, I know people who weigh literally 20 pounds more competition day. I just don't think that that's honest to have a 183 pound record and someone weighs 203 pounds the moment they're doing it. But either way, that's a point that I can understand either way. In my opinion, the biggest single issue when it comes to legitimacy is squat depth. And that's the biggest reason why I'll always compete in the USAPL and IPF, because you simply have to squat to depth. There is no joking around. There's no favoring someone just because they're going for a record attempt. I've seen a record attempt get red lighted and they just did not care at all. So that's how it should be done. It should be as strict as possible and it should be by the rules. If you don't get the lift, then there's no reason to just give it to someone because the crowd's into the moment. And I've seen that happen. My last point is level of competition. And I recall going through other federations as a younger lifter before I decided fully that I'd stick with the USAPL. And I was amazed at how easy some of these meets were and how you could literally set records simply by lifting and being the only person there. I remember there was literally a world meet, so-called world meet, and there was nobody but I think 2 people in an age and weight class. It's just ridiculous that even happens and that it's called a world meet. But that's how the state of powerlifting kind of is outside of the USAPL, at least in the United States. So not only when you're talking about drug-tested meets is the USAPL by far the most difficult, but also the IPF is a world-level competition. It's the only one you'll ever see drug-tested that's a legitimate world meet. where you have people from other countries that are extremely strong, that train hard year round, and they're all smart with their training. They're all, you see them, they're all technicians when it comes to the movements, and they're all competing for the same title. You won't see that anywhere else in powerlifting, and personally I think that this is the key to powerlifting growing as a sport, to see that big competition, to have that one meet that is a recognized world championship. So all those 3 points are why, in my opinion, if you are a drug-free lifter, that you should support the USAPL and IPF, and I think that that will help powerlifting grow more than anything. And I'll include links in the description so you can like the Facebook page of USA Powerlifting and of IPF, and so you can sign up as a member of USA Powerlifting if you want to compete in a competition. However, I will say that I know some people talk about how the fact that there's not a USAPL meet near them. And I understand that this is, something that you can't work around really. But I think that if you like their Facebook page at least, that will show them that there's some demand there. And so hopefully then people will start organizing more meets around across the nation. And this was something that was in my plans all along, was to first promote myself, then promote powerlifting as a whole, and then focus on spreading the USAPL and IPF specifically. And this is why you see that I always feature, when I feature lifters, they're always IPF lifters, like Brett Gibbs and Connor Lutz, for example. And I continue to try to persuade other lifters to move towards the IPF, like John Hack, for example, totaled over 1,700 pounds, which is the world record for drug-tested total. And I've been trying to convince him, and he's decided that he is going to now start to move towards the USAPL and IPF and compete in Worlds, I think, in a couple of years, because he competed at Raw Unity, which does give you a 2-year ban from international competitions in the IPF. But once he's done with that, then he'll compete in the IPF at the world stage and probably go against Brett Gibbs, which will be awesome to see. I just don't buy it when people say that you should just accept all federations and we should just all be happy, this over-idealistic thinking, because it's just not the case. It's just not that every lift is legitimate that's written down as a record. And when it's not, it tarnishes the sport as a whole, in my opinion, because you're comparing everyone to each other regardless of conditions when they're not equal. And I think it's just bad for the sport in general to be as divided as it is, in my opinion. I think it's kind of ironic that if you accept the differences in the different federations, that you actually divide the sport more. There's no other mainstream sport that got big with a bunch of different federations with all different rules. So that's it, guys. Make sure to like the video, support the channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and also check out the links to the USAPL and IPF in the description. Peace.